All right. So you guys should have picked up this worksheet. This is going to walk you through and remind you of which of your grits are meant for carving and shaping and which of these grits are meant for polishing your ring. I'm going to walk you through the sandpaper grits that we have available and some tips and tricks on getting a good finished product on your ring. So the grits should be laid out on the counter in order, as long as you guys always put them back in order. And when you're done with a grit, please put the grit back in the plastic bag. Don't keep them in your little pencil tray because everybody needs to use them, so please make sure we share. Pretty much everybody's going to start with a 60 grit piece of sandpaper, unless your ring is really, really thin, because we already cut it pretty thin, or you just didn't have a lot of wax left. But most people are going to start with a 60 grit. When you're working on your ring should always be on a dowel rod. So on the back counter, we have the giant box of dowel rods. You are going to find a dowel rod. Most of them have a tool attached to one end. That doesn't really matter. You are going to find a dowel rod that's got tape on it, that's relatively close to your ring size. Then you can add and remove tape as needed so that your ring fits snugly onto your dowel rod. The reason for that is we want to be sure that your ring is being supported from the inside. This is still a little bit loose. I would suggest adding just a little bit of tape to this, but I'm going to use it for today. You need your ring to be supported from the inside so when you push on it, it doesn't crack and break. So you need to always work on a dowel rod when you can. If you don't and you break your ring, it's your own fault. So back over here at the grits, I'm going to start with a 60 grit sandpaper. And if you've ever done woodworking, you know one of the best things to do is always to go with the grain of the wood. Well, wax doesn't have a grain, but you're going to create a grain as you start sanding, and you want to stick with that direction as much as you can. If I work on my ring for a while going this way, and then I decide to work on it going this way, all my scratches are going to crosshatch, and they're actually harder to get out of the ring and polish. So try to work in one direction as much as possible. This ring would have a lot of thinning that needs to be done because of how thick this outer wall is. So I'm probably going to have to spend a lot of time on 60 grit sandpaper just thinning this ring out until it's closer to the size that I actually want. And I'm just going to slow and steady wins the race, work on removing wax from my ring until I'm closer to a real shape. Now, if you come back to your grit sheet here, 60, 80, 100, and 120 are all meant for carving and shaping. So that means that I need to get towards my final size with the 60, then I need to change to 80 grit and work it for a while, change to 100 grit and work it for a while, change to 120. So you don't want to go all the way down to your final thickness with a 60 grit, because then you also need to go over it with all these other grits, and it's going to get so thin that it might break. So don't get to a final size with a 60. Then once you've gone through all those grits, you're ready to start polishing. Now, it says to kind of stop here in the middle. If you have carving to do, now's the time to carve. We don't want to carve at the very beginning because then you're going to sand it all off anyway. So you want to get a lot of your sanding done, then do your carving, and then do all your polishing. Back here at the box of dowel rods, there are a gazillion different little tools that have been made. Find one that you like, that you feel like's comfortable, that's doing what you want it to do when you're carving on your ring. Maybe you're carving a shape into the band, maybe you're carving letters, whatever it is. If you find a tool that you really, really like, feel free to keep it in your pencil box. But make sure we're always returning the sandpaper. If you are planning to add wax to your ring, so maybe you're going to add a piece that we're going to glue on, and I told you you're going to use E6000 for that. These boxes are all of the weird things that you can add to your ring. So please put them back where you found them. Keep it organized. But you'll find all kinds of things, like in this box I have sheet wax. And if you look from the side, you can see there's really thick sheet waxes and there's also really thin sheet waxes. So maybe you need something really thin, maybe you need something really thick that you want to cut a piece out of and then glue onto your ring. I have wax wire, I have wax blocks, I have all kinds of stuff. And you are welcome to go through these boxes and see if there's anything that strikes your fancy. So like these are considered wax wire. These ones are square, so they have a squared off shape already to them. Things like this is also considered wax wire, but it's round, and there's a couple different thicknesses. So it's a round wax wire that you could use. Whatever you want to use in here, feel free. Just don't waste it. Make sure you put it back. One of the other really nice things I have in here are some ring templates. So if you want to do something like what's called a signet ring, which means it has like a flat front on it, so maybe something like this one here, you can lay your ring out and take that stencil and actually stencil on your shape, so you're not trying to make it up on your own. You can use the stencils to help you create your final shape, which is super nice. So these are also in the box. Please make sure you put them back. The last thing that you might want while you're carving is you can carve with the tools hot. So if you're trying to remove lots of wax at a time, you can take your tool, light your little candle, warm the end of your tool up so that it gives you a nice smooth cut, and maybe you can remove a little more wax at a time. Just be really careful that you don't like accidentally cut your ring in half or like poke all the way through it, unless that's what you're trying to do, in which case go for it. The candles, just put them back here at the end of the hour so that they can cool. Obviously not back in the bag or you're going to get candle wax all over everything, so don't do that. Once you finish all your carving, you're ready to move on to polishing grits. So polishing grits, in my opinion, start around 220. You may need to go back to the 120 if you created a lot of like jagged edges while you were carving your ring. For polish, it becomes really, really important that you stick to a single direction while you're trying to polish. When you move on from polish grit to polish grit, so from 220 to 320, is when all your scratches look like they're about the same depth. If you're still working it and it seems to be changing color still, which is one of the best ways to tell what size your scratches are, then you need to keep going until everything seems to be about the same texture and about the same depth in your scratches. When you are done, meaning you've gone through all of those polish grits, you should be able to see your reflection in your ring. If you can't see your face in your ring, it's not fully polished. If that's the case, you probably need to go all the way back to a 220 and work it again. So what you don't want to have happen is I come back after maternity leave and tell you that it's not fully polished and you're going to have to start over anyway. So you might as well just do it right while I'm gone. If you have questions, Mrs. Goodwin is supposed to be in and out, and she'll be able to help you, and Miss Thorne will be able to help you too. She's done one of these projects. So if you have anything you need, ask them, and if they don't have the answers, they'll ask me.